us on YouTube or on Spotify, then you're looking at me and you're seeing that behind me there are a bunch of balloons, and the balloons are for a reason. They're not just like a random thing that is behind me. Today is Commotion's 2-year anniversary. I just wanted to just say that off the top of the show and say I'm incredibly lucky to get to do the show. I'm grateful that we've been doing the show for as long as we have been. I get to do it with a really incredible team. So happy anniversary to Commotion. But that is not the thing that we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about a very popular kids content creator. If you don't know Ms.Rachel, have a listen.
Hi, friends. Look, it's a surprise egg. Should we open it and see what's inside? Yeah?
When I listen to Ms.Rachel, I want to do the Ms.Rachel voice, so I'm going to try to refrain from doing the rest of the show in that voice. Ms.Rachel started as a preschool teacher who started making YouTube videos during the pandemic. And it is impossible to tell you just how popular and beloved Ms.Rachel is, but maybe some numbers could do some help here. She has more than 13 million YouTube subscribers. Her videos have more than 7 billion views. And starting this week, her content is now available on Netflix. And that tells us a little bit, I think, about how kids' content is changing. Amil Niazi is here, Kathryn VanArendonk is here, and they're ready to get into it. Amil, Kathryn, welcome to the show, y'all. How's it going?
Good.
Hello.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's nice to have you guys here. Listen, Kathryn, maybe let's start with, for anybody who's listening who's like, I don't know much about Ms.Rachel. What's her deal? Who is she? And how did she get here?
Yeah, so Ms.Rachel, as you said, is the most popular figure in the world, I believe.
For
if you are
toddlers?
under the age of you're under the age of 5.
Yeah.
And as you explained, she started as a preschool teacher and was uploading videos to YouTube beginning sort of pandemic years, and has swiftly become sort of the only thing that anyone shows their kids when they are particularly in this age group that is too early for what I would describe as like narrative television. 1-year-olds cannot follow a story. Their brains they don't have the developmental capacity.
Yeah.
No. And so what Ms.Rachel does are I would describe as an incredibly high quality and very personal library story hour. Maybe there's some story that she'll do. Maybe she'll, tell a little bit of a short narrative. But for the most part, it's songs that she will look directly into your eyes at the camera and sing. She'll do hand gestures. She'll talk about sort of feeling kinds of things. But it is incredibly approachable for a very, very young audience.
Amil, you've got 3 kids in your house. One of them is definitely right in that Ms.Rachel zone. Do you want to talk about how she lands in your house?
Well, here's the funny thing. Yes, I have 3 kids, 2 of which would have been perfect Ms.Rachel age when she started streaming. My kids have never seen her until the last few weeks. Because we don't watch YouTube in my house. We're just discovering Ms.Rachel. But what I can say is that even though my eldest is 7, so firmly, I think, out of the Ms.Rachel age, it doesn't matter. She sort of has this very intimate way of connecting with kids, and he loves it. My 1-year-old loves it. My 4-year-old loves it. It's very engaging content.
I want to go back to the thing that you mentioned earlier, the idea that your kids are not big YouTube watchers. YouTube is not a big thing in your house. You recently wrote a piece about this in The Cut, about the idea that, you know what, you've got this decision to be like, we're going to stop watching, as my kids are going to stop watching YouTube. Let's talk a little bit about how you arrived at that decision. Why did you decide it was time to maybe pull the plug on YouTube and say, that's not for me and the kids?
Yeah, I mean, there's no YouTube for the kids in my house, and I don't watch YouTube either. For whatever reason, millennialism, I don't know, but just never done it.
The tone you're saying it is like, look, I'm a grown woman. I have other things to do that are not.
I'm an adult. I have a cable package. There's a lot of other stuff I can watch. But For me, it was a few things. One, there's just zero quality control on YouTube. You know, yeah, sure, you start off with Ms.Rachel, but the algorithm's job is to keep your kids hooked and watching. And so it just pumps out whatever is going to keep them doing that. And so I noticed that my kids might, you know, start with like these construction videos that seemed pretty harmless, but then they would start to get pushed really creepy, uncomfortable, strange things, bluey, but like saying odd things. You know, that's kind of what triggered it. As my son was like, Mom, I was watching a bluey video, but the mommy was saying weird things. And I was like, oh, this is like, it's uncomfortable, it's unnerving, it's bizarre, and my kids should not be exposed to it, especially when I'm so careful about what they're watching. So it was the quality control, it was the algorithm that promoted hours of watching. It's also very solitary, right? Like when we watch TV, when we watch a movie, it's popcorn, it's blankets, like it's very, very much a communal activity. YouTube is whatever, if it's on a phone or an iPad, it's such a solitary activity, and my kids would like not be engaging with anyone else in the family. They would not have even have checked in with themselves. They wouldn't have had drank water. Like it just didn't seem healthy. It made them anxious and irritable. And so we totally banned YouTube, and probably one of the best parenting decisions I've ever made.
Kathryn, I got to say, like, when I was younger, my parents would be like, there are channels you should stay away from. You should never flick to those channels. And I was like, I don't know what happens on Spike TV, but that is none of my business. I'm not going to find out. And I think, like, as I became a parent, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be that parent. I don't think that's going to be my approach. And then YouTube happened to me. And so I have an 8-year-old. And for me, like, it's not YouTube is a no, but YouTube is like a supervised activity, which is to say, I got to be around. And if I'm not around, like, no, sorry, you can't watch YouTube. Your kids are a little older. What's the stance on YouTube in your household?
It's actually very similar to Amil, although it sounds like I'm sort of halfway between both of you. My kids are 7 and almost 11, and they've never had unsupervised YouTube access. It's not something they ever grew up with. For whatever reason, I lucked into making that stance very early in their lives.
Nice.
So it wasn't something that I then had to go back on. They see YouTube videos, but it is generally when their father and I are like, you need to see Stevie Nicks staring into Lindsey Buckingham's eyes to understand how culture works. Or like, here's a guy who made Crazy Squirrel Olympics, and I think you would enjoy that. But YouTube is not it's not an app that they have on any of their devices. I do give them lots of screen time. They can watch basically anything they want on a Netflix Kids channel. But for exactly the reason that Amil was describing, I am so uncomfortable with them free scrolling on YouTube. So even YouTube Kids.
The reason we sort of are rooting it in our experiences as parents here is that, like, I don't think that's disconnected from this trend that we're seeing right now, Amil. Like, so this sort of like idea that, you know, there are a lot of kids creators on YouTube, and some of them are quite successful. Ms.Rachel sort of being the biggest and best example of this. But do you see a connection between the attitude that we kind of all seem to have, at least around this group that here? Do you see a connection between this attitude and this migration that we're seeing from some kids creators to streaming networks, places that are sort of seen as a bit more of a walled garden in a way? We seem to have a bit more of a trust relationship with those spaces than we do maybe YouTube. Do you think that's what's going on, Amil?
I do. I mean, you know, take this conversation as a microcosm of what other people are feeling. The response to my essay was overwhelming. I had so many people reach out to me and say, I've done this exact same thing. They were, you know, many of them, you know, different places on the spectrum of I let them, but now I stopped, or I never will. But parents are feeling like that is not a safe place for their kids anymore. I think someone like Rachel is not unaware of that conversation. She's not unaware of the data, you know, the overwhelming data that says this is not a safe place for your kids. It's not a healthy place for your kids. So someone like her, you know, because streamers, they don't need Netflix. They've got a very engaged, loyal audience on a platform where it's free, where, like I said, there's no quality control. They can do whatever they want. But she is an educator. She understands all of that. She knows the conversations that are happening amongst parents. And to me, it makes perfect sense that she would then say, I want to maintain this relationship with my audience. I want to maintain this amazing career. Let's take it to a place where there is more safety, where there is more quality control. Like, don't get me started on Netflix's autoplay, but
Yes.
you know, that's something that you can control, obviously. But absolutely, it's not happening in a vacuum. I can't imagine that it is. You know, I commend her for that, because now my kids get to watch Miss Rachel, whereas they weren't allowed to before. So I think it's good for everyone.
So, Kathryn, for me, like, this is where an anxiety ends up connecting with a business case. Like, that's like what's interesting about this scenario here. The idea that Miss Rachel would start making YouTube videos and then become this gigantic star on that platform. That's in many cases the promise of YouTube. I don't want to sound like I'm kind of like sitting here being like, oh, I'm judging YouTube, I'm dunking on YouTube. That's actually what YouTube is designed for, and it's very good at that. What it's maybe not good at is responding to the anxiety that pops up from parents and being like, I don't know how you get from a nice video that you like your kid watching, to a video that looks like Bluey, but the mom is saying weird things. And because you can't trust that, because you can't fully trust that environment, that walled garden, there's something about that anxiety that powers an entirely separate business case, which is to say, these streamers are like, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to leave this place, or not leave this place, but maybe branch out and partner with other places. So talk to me a little bit about like the business case for this migration of content from YouTube to these streaming platforms here. What's at stake for the streamers, you think?
Well, for the platforms, I think we've been articulating why this is a very easy business decision to make for some place like Netflix. Miss Rachel comes with an incredible proven audience. You got to get in on that. You want these kids part of your ecosystem so that they watch other programs. For Miss Rachel, the business prospect is really fascinating for me, actually, because she is not creating a brand new Netflix show. She is simply licensing material that she has already created. And one of the really fascinating things about the entire Miss Rachel situation for me is that she has created a program that I think it's extremely likely she would not have been able to create if she had gone to Netflix first. I was talking with the creator of some other major children's TV shows. And they were telling me that part of the problem with something like Miss Rachel, if you had started at PBS or even at Netflix, is that the American Academy of Pediatrics says that kids that age shouldn't be watching screens. And so you would be saying, here is a show designed for 1-year-olds to 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they would be saying, we can't really market it for them because we're not really supposed to be showing babies TV that age anyhow. But if you're Miss Rachel, you're accepting the reality that babies are watching screens, and you're sort of immediately shortcutting any kind of studio notes, notes from these major organizations that are trying to weigh in and shift the creative process, the thing that you are designed to create. And so she was able to say, to heck with it, I will create the thing that we all know that babies need, and parents will use, and then kind of end run around all of those conversations and end up on Netflix anyhow. Very fascinating to me.
Well, and I think like underneath all of this, Amil, and I have maybe about 30 seconds here, is like a hunger for parents to be like, I want to be able to control what my children, my toddlers are watching, what they're exposed to, but also at the same time, I want it to be high quality content. And Miss Rachel becomes kind of a good example of this. Why do you think other, larger networks or streamers haven't been like, you know what, this is a priority for us? Why do you think they've kind of like left parents on their own on that front?
Well, they don't need to, right? Like Kathryn said, Miss Rachel never needed Netflix in the first place. I could talk about this for hours, to be honest, because her show is born out of the pandemic's need for help, for parents to have help. And we might not have put a 1-year-old in front of a screen in the first place had it not been for this explosion and experiment that we were all put into. And so now we're in this new reality. Most people don't need it. Miss Rachel's making an educated choice to abandon it. But for the most part, the money is in just people staying on YouTube. But the conversation is shifting towards something different. So we're at a very interesting moment in children's programming where a streamer that maybe wants to keep their audience, has a more educated parent in the background, may decide, I have to start developing these relationships with streamers if I want to be able to keep growing that audience. Maybe you maintain your audience, but you don't grow it. And so, Kathryn, we could just Just offline it and
You and
talk
me.
for hours.
Let's go.
I gotta leave it there, but also I really appreciate your time. You guys are the best. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much for your time again.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, thank you. Kathryn VanArendonk is a TV critic for Vulture. Amil Niazi is a writer at The Cut, and she's in Toronto. Speaking of YouTube, by the way, for the folks who are watching us on YouTube right now, we got to say bye for now, but Commotion's going to be back tomorrow. But for the rest of you, stick around because we're going to talk about Sundance in just a moment.